never believed in miracles, especially not the kind that slap you across the face while you're trying to sip a latte in peace. But that morning, staring at the tiny ultrasound photo, I felt my whole carefully constructed life teeter on the edge of absurdity. My name is Nathaniel Nate Carter, 30 years old, living a mostly predictable life in suburban Ohio. I had a good job at an advertising firm, a rented apartment that smelled faintly of coffee and old books, and a weekend ritual of Netflix and frozen pizza. Stability, predictability, control. All of it vanished in one heartbeat when I found out I was supposedly going to be a father. I didn't even know what to say at first. My mind went blank, then raced, then curled into this knot of panic and disbelief. There had to be a mistake. And then there was James. James Sullivan, my coworker, my rival, my secret source of more than platonic daydreams, and apparently the other parent. He was leaning against the doorway of my apartment, holding a box of takeout, eyebrows raised as if he just walked into a scene from a bad soap opera. "So, congratulations?" he said, voice hesitant but eyes flickering with something unspoken, something that made my stomach twist. "Congratulations? James, if this isn't. How is this even?" My voice trailed into incoherent gasps as I waved the photo between us like it might magically make sense if we both stared long enough. He looked down at it, then back at me. His fingers twitched on the edge of the box. "Nate, you're supposed to be the dad." "Supposed to be?" I repeated, laughing nervously. It sounded ridiculous even in my own head. "Are you joking?" "No joke," he muttered. "The clinic said it. The results came back. Well, it's complicated." And just like that, my mind decided to combust. We were both silent after that, standing in the soft light of my apartment, the smell of takeout and tension hanging between us. Somehow, despite everything, I felt an ache that wasn't panic. Something warmer, muddled, and dangerous. The first weeks were a blur of tests, consultations, and awkward questions about paternity. I started noticing things about James the first hadn't before: the way his hands fidgeted when he was nervous, the soft curve of his smile when he thought I wasn't looking, the unexpected warmth in his presence that made my chest tight in ways that weren't panic. We were forced into a partnership neither of us wanted but both had to navigate. And yet, the more I watched him interact with the idea of fatherhood, the more I realized I didn't hate either him. One rainy afternoon, we sat on the couch at my apartment, notebooks and medical pamphlets scattered around like battlefield debris. James had his hand brushing against mine more than necessary. I didn't move it away. He looked at me, voice barely above a whisper. "I never thought I'd be here like this." "Like this how?" I asked, heart hammering. "Like, sharing this, sharing you." His eyes were soft, uncertain, but hopeful in a way that made my chest ache. "It's scary, but I don't want to do this alone." I swallowed hard. His words felt like the first warm sunlight in a long, frozen winter. Despite everything, the panic, the absurdity, the fear, I wanted to reach for him. I wanted to lean into the confusion and see where it might take us. Then the truth hit. One evening, after a particularly stressful day filled with lab visits and lawyers' questions about legal paternity, the call came. My blood test, the one taken weeks ago to confirm everything, had come back with results I didn't expect. I was not the father. The ground felt like it had shifted beneath me. Every assumption, every anxious plan, every fluttering feeling for James. What did it mean now? I drove to James' apartment that night, rain streaking the windshield, mind spinning. He opened the door, worried eyes meeting mine. "The test," I began, voice low, tense. It's not mine." James' expression was a mixture of relief, confusion, and something softer, something almost like gratitude. "I figured it might be complicated, but you cared anyway." And there it was. The confession neither of us had been ready to voice, that our bond had grown, quietly, amidst chaos. My chest tightened with emotion, and without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't pull away. We spent the rest of the night talking, really talking about everything we'd been too scared to say, about what had drawn us together, what we'd felt in the quiet moments of panic and shared responsibility, about the small ways our hearts had been threading together while the world was telling us to keep apart. By the time the rain stopped, a sense of clarity had settled over us. We didn't need a child to bind us, didn't need a crisis to force us together. We had each other, fully and deliberately, finally free from the chaotic misconception that had started it all. Weeks passed. We began to explore the world we'd glimpsed in that first, chaotic moment, shared breakfasts, long walks under falling leaves, laughter in the quiet of late nights. The tension and the panic that had once defined our interactions transformed into a gentle, steady intimacy that neither of us had dared imagine. One afternoon, we found ourselves sitting on a park bench, golden light spilling over the lake. James leaned against me, small sigh escaping him. "You know," he murmured, "I thought this whole thing would ruin us." I shook my head, smiling despite the lingering memories of panic. It didn't. If anything, it brought us closer. We survived it, and here we are. He looked up, eyes shimmering, and kissed me softly, deliberately. And in that moment, the chaos, the shock, the heartbreak, it all dissolved. All that remained was warmth, trust, and a fragile, beautiful love that neither of us had expected but both had longed for. The world hadn't turned upside down after all. It had merely shifted into a better, brighter version of itself, one where we could finally laugh without fear, love without hesitation, and live without pretending to be anything other than who we were. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like home wasn't a place, it was a person. We began to plan small things together, weekend trips, quiet dinners, shared apartments. The shadow of what could have been lingered like a faint memory, but it was no longer a source of panic. It was a testament to resilience, to the strange, messy beauty of human connection. I never expected to find love in a paternity scare, of all things. But life has a way of turning even the most absurd moments into something breathtaking. And as James squeezed my hand during one of our walks, the world finally felt right side up. We laughed more freely now, our touches lingering, our gazes carrying the intimacy that had grown quietly in the spaces between fear and misunderstanding. Love had arrived unannounced, unearned, and undeniably real. And that, I realized, was enough. The seasons changed, as they always do. Fall gave way to winter, and one snowy evening we stood in my kitchen making cocoa, laughing at some ridiculous argument over marshmallows. I caught James staring at me with that soft, unwavering gaze that had once sent panic through my chest and now sent warmth instead. "You know," he said, voice low, "I don't need miracles to be happy." I raised an eyebrow. "No? Not even a false pregnancy?" He laughed, pulling me closer. "Especially a false pregnancy. Because it brought me to you." I kissed him then, long and gentle, letting the snow outside blur into a hazy glow. And in that embrace, I understood fully. Sometimes, the world turns upside down not to destroy you, but to show you where you truly belong. James and I didn't need a child to connect us. We had each other, and that was more than enough. We built a life on ordinary days made extraordinary by love. Coffee mornings, late-night conversations, quiet sunsets watched hand in hand. There was no dramatic declaration, no cinematic crescendo, just the simple, breathtaking joy of two people discovering that even in the chaos of life, love could root itself firmly, beautifully, irrevocably. And in that quiet, radiant love, I found home. The days following the revelation were surprisingly calm, if you could call the storm inside my chest calm. I spent hours replaying every conversation with James, analyzing his words, his gestures, the moments when his hand lingered just a second too long. Every fleeting glance suddenly had meaning, every casual laugh felt loaded with intent. And yet, amidst the chaos of my overthinking, a warmth had begun to seep in, a recognition that what we were building was real, no matter how absurd the beginnings. James, for his part, seemed to settle into a rhythm of care and cautious affection. We began spending more time together outside the sterile confines of hospital appointments and paternity tests. Small things, grabbing coffee in the mornings before work, walking home through streets littered with fallen leaves, sharing playlists and teasing each other over music taste. Those moments were quiet, unremarkable to the outside world, but charged with an intimacy that made my chest tighten every time he smiled at me. One Saturday, I found myself on my porch, sipping a lukewarm latte, when James called. "Hey, you awake?" His voice had that soft, teasing quality that had made my heart do flips during long conference calls. "I'm awake," I said, trying not to sound as nervous as I felt. "Why? Did the cat finally start paying rent?" He laughed, a light, airy sound that made the tension in my shoulders melt. "No, I was thinking, maybe we could go for a walk? It's beautiful out." I hesitated for a moment, my brain filing through the social logic of just friends versus something more, and then I realized I didn't care about the rules anymore. "Sure, give me 10 minutes. When he arrived, he leaned against my doorframe, casual yet impossibly magnetic. I noticed the way the light caught his blonde hair, the subtle curve of his jaw, the nervous energy in his stance. My chest ached in a deliciously painful way. We walked in silence for a while, just enjoying the crisp air and the crunch of leaves beneath our feet. Every now and then, our hands brushed, sending jolts of warmth up my arm. And then, when the moment felt inevitable, our fingers intertwined. It was electric but gentle, a simple contact loaded with meaning. "I never thought we'd end up here," James said softly, eyes on the horizon. "Here being?" I prompted, heart thudding. "Here together. I mean, not like this," he admitted, finally turning to meet my gaze. There was vulnerability there, something he rarely let anyone see. I was so scared, about everything, about the baby, about the results, about us. I stopped walking, turning fully to face him. "James, me too." Every part of me was terrified. "But I've realized something. I don't care about the fear anymore. I just want you." His eyes widened slightly, lips parting, and then he closed the distance between us, brushing his hand against my cheek. The touch was electric, hesitant, and yet full of trust. I leaned into him, letting the words unspoken between us settle in the space we created. And then, without preamble, our lips met. The kiss was slow, testing, exploratory, a culmination of weeks of tension, confusion, and longing. When we finally pulled back, breathing slightly ragged, James chuckled nervously. "Well, that was something." "Yeah?" I breathed, smiling despite the pounding in my chest. "Something I've wanted for a long time." The weeks that followed were a mixture of awkwardness, laughter, and an intensifying closeness. Workdays became punctuated by stolen glances and casual touches. Evenings were reserved for long conversations, playful teasing, and occasional bursts of laughter that echoed through our apartments. We were no longer just co-workers or reluctant partners in a paternity saga. We were discovering each other, layer by layer, with all the caution and excitement of first love. One evening, James invited me to his apartment for dinner. He'd attempted to cook something involving pasta, garlic, and a slightly alarming amount of butter. I arrived to find him pacing, panicked, yet undeniably adorable. "I may have slightly overestimated my cooking skills," he admitted, gesturing toward a boiling pot. "And also, possibly underestimated how messy my kitchen would get." I laughed, setting down my bag. "Well, at least you're honest. That counts for something, right?" He smiled, a mix of relief and affection. "I'm glad you came. I wanted to do this properly. No crises, no misunderstandings. Just dinner, and maybe something after." I stepped closer, lowering my voice. "I think after is my favorite part." We shared a quiet meal, punctuated by laughter, stolen bites, and lingering touches. By the time the dishes were done, we were seated on his couch, shoulders brushing, hands intertwined. The city lights spilled through the window, painting our faces in soft amber. "You know," James murmured, leaning against me, "I never thought a false alarm could lead to this." I chuckled, resting my head against his shoulder. Life is weird like that, but I'm glad it did. As the seasons changed, so did our relationship. Fall's crisp air gave way to winter's quiet snowfalls, and our walks evolved from casual strolls to bundled adventures through frosted parks and twinkling streets. Every kiss, every touch, every shared smile solidified something that neither of us had dared hope for amidst the chaos of the paternity misunderstanding. We began talking about the future, small things at first weekend trips, movie nights, shared apartments. Then larger questions crept in, what we wanted from life, from love, from each other. The initial panic that had once defined our interactions was replaced by trust, understanding, and a deep, abiding affection that neither of us had expected but both had longed for. One snowy evening, after a particularly long day at work, we found ourselves curled up on the couch in James' apartment. The city outside glittered like a million tiny stars. He turned to me, his face soft in the glow of the lamps, and said, "I never imagined I'd be this happy. I never imagined someone like you would. Choose me." I kissed him softly, hands threading through his hair. "James, I don't choose you because I have to. I choose you because I want to. Every day." He smiled, eyes glistening. "Every day. Every day," I confirmed, pressing a gentle kiss to his forehead. "Even on the days when I'm grumpy, or when life feels ridiculous, or when we argue about the dumbest things." He laughed softly, nuzzling closer. "Well, I guess I can live with that." By now, our lives had intertwined seamlessly. Work stress was softened by knowing someone was waiting at home, laughter and warmth filling the spaces between responsibilities. We discovered the small joys of life together, cooking disasters that turned into memorable meals, impromptu movie nights on rainy weekends, late-night walks under the city lights. Our families, initially skeptical, grew fond of seeing us together. Dinner invitations and holiday celebrations became occasions to showcase our bond. I saw a different side of James in these moments of tenderness, patience, and humor that complemented my own quirks and insecurities. It was a partnership rooted not in obligation but in mutual admiration and love. There were moments, of course, when the memory of the paternity scare lingered, a sharp reminder of how fragile and unpredictable life could be. But rather than fear, it now served as a reminder. Love could emerge even from chaos, and resilience could turn panic into intimacy. One late evening, after a long day at the office, we found ourselves walking through the park where we had shared our first intentional, intimate moments. The streetlights cast golden halos around the snow-dusted paths, and our breaths formed clouds in the cold air. James stopped, turning to face me, his expression serious yet soft. "Nate, I know the beginning of this story was ridiculous, chaotic, scary, but I wouldn't change a thing, because it brought me here, to you." I cupped his face, feeling the warmth of his skin beneath my fingers. "James, I feel the same. Even if it had been a mistake, even if the world had shifted beneath us, I choose this, choose you, every time." He smiled, eyes shining with emotion, and we kissed beneath the soft glow of the park lights. It was slow, deliberate, full of all the words we hadn't yet spoken. It was a kiss that acknowledged our past, celebrated our present, and promised a future. When we finally pulled away, he laughed softly. "I guess we survived the apocalypse of paternity tests and lab results." I laughed, pulling him closer. "Yeah, and look at us now. Stronger, closer, happier than I ever imagined." We stood there for a long moment, holding each other in the quiet of the snowy park, letting the world fade around us. The chaos that had started it all seemed distant now, a shadow that had only served to illuminate the brilliance of our bond. And in that shared silence, I realized fully that the world hadn't truly turned upside down. It had merely rearranged itself, making room for something extraordinary. Love, laughter, and the fragile, exhilarating joy of finding your person when you least expected it. Our love continued to grow in the ordinary, beautiful rhythms of life. Each day was filled with small discoveries. The way James' hand fits perfectly in mine, the quiet humor that punctuates our conversations, the comfort of simply being together without expectation. The world outside remained unpredictable, sometimes harsh, often absurd, but inside the bubble we had created, it was warm, safe, and infinitely tender. Evenings were spent cooking together, reading side by side, sharing secrets and dreams. Weekends brought adventures, hiking trails, long drives, spontaneous road trips, always ending with laughter, kisses, and quiet moments of reflection. Every shared smile, every brush of fingers, every whispered, "I love you," deepened the intimacy we had fought, nervously and awkwardly, to embrace. Life, it seemed, had a sense of humor. It had thrown us into panic and misunderstanding, forced us to confront fears and insecurities, and yet, in the process, revealed a love neither of us could have planned or predicted. And through it all, I discovered something profoundly simple: that love, when genuine, resilient, and tender, is capable of transforming chaos into clarity, fear into trust, and uncertainty into a life worth embracing fully. James squeezed my hand, eyes glinting with mischief and affection. "So, dinner," I smiled, pressing my forehead to his. "Always." And in that simple, unremarkable moment, I understood that this laughter, warmth, and shared life was the extraordinary miracle I had never expected but had always hoped for. Winter melted into spring, and with it, the rhythm of our lives grew steadier. Every day felt lighter, infused with the gentle certainty that we had finally found our place in each other. The panic and misunderstanding of the past had become a distant memory, replaced by laughter, shared routines, and the quiet comfort of simply knowing we belonged together. James and I had moved into a modest apartment together, the kind with creaky floors, sunlight that spilled through old windows in the morning, and the faint scent of coffee that always lingered no matter how often I cleaned. It wasn't grand or luxurious, but it was ours, and every corner of it held fragments of us. Mismatched mugs, dog-eared books, a small succulent James refused to kill, and our laughter echoing from room to room. One evening, we found ourselves on the couch, nestled under a thick blanket, sharing slices of leftover pizza and trying to decide which movie to watch. James rested his head on my shoulder, and I felt that familiar thrill, a mixture of comfort and desire that never failed to catch me off guard. "You know," he murmured, eyes half-lidded with contentment, "I thought after everything, I'd be exhausted by now, emotionally drained. But it's the opposite. I feel calm, happy, like I've been waiting for this forever, even though I didn't know it." I smiled, pressing a gentle kiss to the top of his head. "James, you don't need a crisis to make life meaningful. Just you, me, and maybe a little pizza every now and then." He chuckled, lifting his head to look at me. "You make it sound so easy, but it's not, is it? Getting here, surviving the chaos, the misunderstandings." I reached for his hand, threading our fingers together. It was messy, yes, and terrifying at times, but it was worth every moment, because it led us here. And indeed it had. Spring brought longer days, blooming flowers, and a renewed sense of possibility. We explored the city together on weekends, wandered through farmers' markets, and took spontaneous trips to nearby lakes or quiet towns. There was a freedom in this simplicity, a joy that neither of us had anticipated amidst the whirlwind of the paternity mix-up. One Sunday, James and I decided to take a day trip to a lake a couple of hours away. The air was crisp, carrying hints of water and pine. We spent hours walking along the shore, skipping stones, and laughing at each other's clumsy attempts to outdo the other in small games. Eventually, we settled on a weathered dock, sitting side by side, our legs dangling over the edge, fingers intertwined. "I could get used to this," James said softly, leaning his head on my shoulder. "All of this. Quiet mornings, spontaneous adventures. You." I laughed lightly, feeling a deep warmth spread through me. "I could too. And the best part? No false alarms, no chaos. Just us." He lifted his head slightly to look at me, eyes bright with affection. "You know, I don't think I've ever been this content before. Even when life was simpler, I don't think I felt this complete." I smiled, brushing a strand of hair from his face. That's because this isn't about life being simple. It's about finding the right person to share it with. And I found mine. We kissed then, slow and deliberate, the kind of kiss that carries years of tension, longing, and finally relief. When we pulled back, neither of us spoke for a while, simply soaking in the tranquility, the soft rippling of the lake, and the closeness we had fought unknowingly at first to achieve. The following months were filled with milestones, small and significant alike. We hosted friends in our apartment, celebrated birthdays, cooked elaborate dinners, and learned to navigate the quirks and habits that made us, well, us. Arguments were rare and often trivial, and when they did occur, we approached them with patience and humor rather than fear or insecurity. One particularly memorable evening, after a long day at work, James suggested we try cooking together, a risky proposition given our history of kitchen disasters. The result was a chaotic but joyful mess. Flour on the counter, sauce on the floor, and laughter that echoed through the apartment. As we collapsed on the couch afterward, exhausted and grinning, James sighed. See, life doesn't have to be perfect to be amazing. It just has to feel right. I nodded, leaning against him. Exactly, and it feels right, every day, even the messy ones. We stayed on that couch long after the dishes were done, talking about everything and nothing, making plans for the future, and dreaming aloud in ways that felt impossibly safe and exhilarating all at once. It was a far cry from the panic and confusion of the early days, yet it was all built upon that foundation, a reminder that love can thrive even in chaos. Summer came, bringing with it long, golden evenings and warm nights. We spent hours walking through city streets, sharing ice cream, holding hands without self-consciousness, and laughing at the absurdities of daily life. Each day felt like a gift, a confirmation that the world could indeed rearrange itself in beautiful ways. One evening, we attended a small rooftop gathering hosted by a friend. As we leaned against the railing, looking out over the city skyline painted in hues of orange and pink, James squeezed my hand. You know, I've been thinking about us, about everything that led to now, and I can't imagine life any other way. I turned to him, cupping his face gently. Neither can I. The chaos, the panic, the ridiculous mix-up, it all led me to you. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. He smiled, eyes glistening in the fading sunlight. Then let's promise to keep choosing this, choosing us. Every day. Every day? I echoed, pressing a soft, lingering kiss to his lips. And we did. By the time the first anniversary of the paternity revelation rolled around, James and I had firmly established a life together, one defined not by crises but by laughter, shared dreams, and the quiet assurance that we were exactly where we were meant to be. We celebrated with a simple dinner, homemade cake, and long talks about our hopes for the future. The event felt less like a milestone and more like a testament to resilience, love, and the extraordinary way life can surprise you. On that night, as we sat on the couch, James resting his head against my shoulder, I realized something profoundly simple. The world hadn't truly turned upside down, it had shifted in ways that allowed love to flourish. The fear, the uncertainty, the false alarm, they had been catalysts, not obstacles. I never imagined, James murmured, voice soft. I never imagined we'd end up here like this, so happy. I kissed the top of his head, feeling the weight of the year behind us and the infinite possibilities ahead. Neither did I, but I'm grateful every day for it. For you. For us. He smiled, eyes shining. Me too. Me too. We stayed there for a long while, letting the city hum around us, feeling the steady, comforting rhythm of a love that had weathered chaos and emerged stronger. And in that quiet, radiant moment, I understood fully. Life could turn upside down, but it could also turn right side up in ways more beautiful than I had ever dared to imagine. We didn't need miracles, paternity scares, or dramatic events to define us. We had each other, and that was enough. Our hands remained intertwined, our hearts aligned, and our laughter mingled with the soft hum of the city. The world was vast, unpredictable, and often absurd, but in that moment, it felt perfectly arranged. Love had arrived unexpectedly, nurtured by confusion and fear, and transformed into something steadfast, tender, and irrevocable. And as James leaned against me, whispering a soft, contented sigh, I knew without a doubt this was home. We had survived the chaos, embraced the unexpected, and found each other in the midst of it all. And that, I realized with a heart full of gratitude and joy, was everything. We kissed again, slow and deliberate, letting the quiet intimacy of the evening settle around us. No words were needed. The world, in all its chaos and absurdity, had finally made sense. And in that understanding, we found not just love but peace, happiness, and a future filled with promise. Thank you for listening. If you find it interesting, please like and subscribe to follow the next stories.